Conversations. I am your host and fucking host, Sean Welsh. I am joined today by a man that has been able to turn one of my favorite plants into a liquid, Mr. Qwik Liquids himself, Blake Viala. Blake, how are you, man?
Good. How you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. I've been watching your stuff for a while. I'm not big on social media except for LinkedIn. That's where I find Blake and his stuff. That's where I first found your company. Again, my intrigue is through the roof. I can't wait to jump into this. So, as we talked about, we like to start it off with a little bit of origin story between you and the beautiful plant of cannabis. So, Blake, tell us, how did you get started in cannabis and when did you first come in contact with it?
Well, I got my start in legal cannabis in the California cannabis market in May of 2018, running conditional use permitting, land use entitlements for brands that wanted to get into the California market. Some of the larger groups you see operating in California cannabis today, Cookies, Green Door, Urban Leaf, One Plant, help them acquire the licensure that they work under today. At that time, we thought that California would have more around, say, 4,000 dispensaries about now. Unfortunately, we know that has come to be not true. Once that slowed down, I kind of identified cannabis beverage as the next up-and-coming sector that I wanted to operate within. I was fortunate enough to get a job up at Space Station in Woodland, California. Space Station by volume is the #1 cannabis beverage manufacturer in the world at that time. I was managing supply chain for brands like Can and Uncle Arnie's and Venice Cookie Company and Pabst Labs. We did the Wonder Launch, Artet, Kaizen. We worked with some really, really smart people that were coming out of different fields at that time to work within the cannabis beverage space. So we knew something was up, right? The writing was on the wall that there was a new medium in which cannabis was being enjoyed. Beverages are instinctual. Beverages are natural. So it was only a matter of time before cannabis and beverages became one another. It actually was not until I had an incident with my mom, of all people. I brought some cannabis beverages over to a family function. Everybody enjoyed them. Didn't really think anything of it until about 4 days later. My mom called me and said, "Hey, could I get some more of those?" And I thought, well, shit, this is weird. The same woman who used to, find my pot in high school and throw it away, what does she want a cannabis beverage for? She said, I felt better the next day after drinking it, and it helped me sleep. So then and there, I thought, well, there's something here. If this is a whole different demographic that's not used to partaking with cannabis, let alone a cannabis beverage, but they find enjoyment in that, let's run with it. So the whole time we were at Space Station, we were looking for a water-soluble option that was really truly in line with the advancements that we were seeing in the California cannabis space at that time. Cultivation techniques, extraction techniques, data sets coming down and through retailers and distributors. We needed something that was going to be more of a pharma-grade approach to water solubility. And no knock on the companies that were in the space at that time, and they're still here today. They have got us to where we are today. But we were just looking for something that was a little more versatile, a little more unique, a little more scalable, but most importantly, more affordable for what we were seeing in the space at that time. We were introduced to some guys in Colorado who, for better parts, are experts in their craft. The gentleman who owns the patent in which I work under is a guy named Jan Zygmunt. Jan's a 75-year-old young Polish guy. Jan is widely respected in his field, is actually one of the creators of a drug called propofol. Jan has been turning oil into water for the better part of 30 plus years. We're just fortunate to be working with his technology and have the exclusive on it in cannabis. So we have been working with this water solubility technology to kind of dive into a different medium. And it's really led us down some pretty great avenues to be able to dive into product development, but also change the way that the plant is being viewed by both the consumer and manufacturer. So kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but here we are today.
2018 is where you got your start. When did you launch Qwik Liquids?
Qwik Liquids was launched in May of 2021.
May of 2021. All right, so you have the time where you're in the space, you're seeing the beverages, you're seeing what's happening there. What drives you to want to create the specific part of the water soluble? Like, because the beverages already exist, so like why why is it something where you were like, look, the reason for this is because you give the mom example, right? You talk about that, but where does that tie come back for you? What is the problem that the soluble fixes that the beverages create? Do you know what I'm saying? You understand what I'm asking you there?
Yeah, actually, there's more kind of a personal answer to that as well too. At the time when I was working at Space Station, my wife and I had decided to stop drinking. She actually has 3 years tomorrow, and I have 3 years on November 21st. And at that time, when we were deciding to stop drinking, we found that cannabis beverages really helped us to achieve what we were trying to do, kind of in that no alcohol kind of approach we were looking for in our lives. So Allison, my wife, her and I were drinking a decent amount of cannabis beverages, and we needed to figure out a way to make it a little more affordable for ourselves. So I kind of started researching how to make cannabis beverages and what you need to do and how you can get there. And that really kind of led us down the water solubility path. And that's what led us to chasing these different types of technologies that we realized we could represent and really kind of do ourselves, potentially better and in a more scalable way than what we were seeing in the space at that time. So really an ability to keep ourselves off of alcohol, but also to make it more affordable to drink the cannabis beverages in the dosages that we were drinking them.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was hoping you'd say or figure you'd say, because when I originally saw it, I related that to the people who came out and you made your own pop, right? I forget who they are, but you were able to like pop, but you had to add that flavoring, that next level, because my wife and I were drinking a ton of pop when we were younger, right? And then we were like, no, we got to get away from that, more water, but you still wanted that flavor, so you kind of made your own. And that's when I envisioned what you were doing. I was like, wait a second, I can control this to every level, right? So that you have a dosage you would put into a drink and you would create or whatever. But it's interesting that you talk about it from a, let's just be honest, right? From a vice perspective, right? It's like, look, I need to stop with the alcohol because it's doing A, B, and C. It must end. But I enjoy having a buzz, right? I enjoy being able to take a layer off that should be as socially acceptable as anything else. But you found a way. Talk to me about the expense, man, because I've never, look, first of all, I live in a non-legal state. Okay. So I'm like, I live in Prohibition currently. I'm on Prohibition Island surrounded by states who are. I'm making a journey over to other states to start enjoying these other things we're talking about. And so what is the cost of beverages? What were the costs? Like as an individual, I don't need you to share your personal finances, but if you could let me know, like when you say spending a lot, what does the space look like compared to, let's just say, a 6-pack of beer?
Yeah, that's a good point. So what we're up against is really a lack of scalable manufacturing and distribution that the traditional consumer packaged goods and alcohol space participates on the daily. Being in bifurcated state-by-state regulated markets, you can only do so much when your borders are the borders of the state and you're not able to operate interstate commerce. So what that does is it really messes with the ability for brands and manufacturers to get their manufacturing co-packing fees, price points, per unit cost down to a price point that makes sense for the consumer, in a product class that also makes sense for their wallets too. When you start asking consumers to spend more than $12 to $15 for a beverage that's got 100 milligrams of distillate-based THC, I think that's kind of a large ask, especially in states like California, where you've got just a ton of biomass and the ability to keep costs low. But what we were seeing in the cannabis beverage market, around 2019 and 2020, I think was really a product of three different things. Exorbitant co-packing fees. The beverage manufacturing companies that were coming online at that time were well-funded, well-operated, had specialized equipment that they had to pay off somehow, some way through co-packing fees or launching in-house brands, and recouping that on the wholesale market. So also, the other way that the prices were being driven up were exorbitant water solubility costs. So if you're not able to get out of a manufacturing facility without your co-packing fee being with your active ingredient and your co-packing less than $250, adding your other ingredients, adding in your marketing, your labels, your sales team, you're coming out at a price point that when you're double keystoning that from wholesale to retail, you're no longer at a price point that makes sense for the consumer. I'm pretty convinced that nobody wants to spend more than $10 for any beverage ever. You might be at a ball game, you might be at a show, you might be at some place where that's just supply and demand, basic econ, but no one really wants to pay more than $10 for a beverage.
Blake, I was in Vegas at a hockey game, dude, and I got 2 beverages for me and my buddy just in the fall of this year. And when people told me the total, I was like, lady, how many did you ring up? She's like, 2. $60 for 2 mixed drinks at a hockey game in Vegas. Nothing will make you quit drinking faster, right, than that. And it was for me, again, I'm a social, I used to be a lay down drunk. I met my wife, she saved my life. So I'm not that way anymore. I've been able to control it, but I'm so far out of it now that I just don't even really enjoy it. And now if it's going to be $30, I'm out, you know. It'd be nice if I could step outside though on some patio and smoke a joint in legal states instead of it still being like hiding behind things, but that's for another day. Blake, when you talk about that's a great point about the state by state, the bifurcation, right? This is where it does kind of bite us in the ass as an industry, because Coca-Cola doesn't have to worry. They just produce cans of pop. You know what I mean? Out. It's 22 cents a can, whatever it is. We can't get there because the economics of an individual state just don't, even in Cali, if they don't make sense in Cali, where will they make sense? I guess people could make an argument for New York maybe, but other than that, I mean, from a traditional market, I don't see how we can. So with your product, your solution, have you been able to find a way then to down the cost for some of these guys in that deliverable area to put into beverages? Or is your whole goal just to be the individual soluble that you do with what you want? Are you guys looking at both angles? How does that approach for you?
Our per milligram cost when it's all said and done, based on a couple of variables, depending on the cost of input in any given state, whether they're using distillate, liquid diamonds, rosin, resin, some kind of specialty, we're able to keep the costs low enough to the point where it's really just another ingredient. It costs us in California, states like California, Arizona, where the distillate costs are hovering around, say, $2,000. We're making water soluble for around a third of a penny per milligram. So when you start talking about making 100 milligram products, 33 cents for the most important part of the product, the active material and the water soluble, it's really not that much. But then when you start considering the prices that are being charged by some of these brands, they're taking it upon themselves to really charge an exorbitant price for 100 milligrams of distillate-based whatnot. The third thing I was talking about earlier about the cost of what affected beverages was the cost of access to market in 2016, 2017, 2018 in California. People paying $30 million for pieces of paper. You don't make that money back double keystoning beverages for, $3 or $4. If you're getting a beverage at wholesale for $3, you're absolutely going to sell it for $9. You're going to sell it for $12 if you can. So the beverage space was just up against a few things. In states though where infrastructure is a little more even keel, states like Oklahoma, Missouri, we're hearing about Illinois as well too. There are some instances where 100 milligram beverages are selling faster than 100 milligram packs of gummies because it's now faster to make a 100 milligram beverage with the right equipment from the beginning versus having product classes that you're really good at and then maybe ramping up and putting beverage manufacturing capabilities into your facility. That's not always the best bet. Do what you're good at or start out with maybe one thing and get good at that. So we were up against a few things, but now it's becoming a little bit easier. But what's ironic about the cannabis beverage space and the hemp D9 beverage space, the mood-altering beverage space, if you will, the product class that has the tiniest market share in the cannabis space is the one that's actually leading the more mainstream takeover of cannabis beverages. Now that we're seeing cannabis beverages pop up in places like Total Wine in Minnesota, it's not going to be that long until what's traditionally considered 2% of the cannabis space of beverages is going to be more like 5 to 10% of the entire mood altering beverage space in a year or two. And then it's going to double on itself after that year over year. So we're expecting huge things from the beverage space. Our technology can support it because we are scalable, because we are affordable, but also because we can offer different options. We can solubilize rosins and resins and offer strain specified beverages that the product the consumer is now looking for. The consumer has a large enough educational kind of understanding of what they do want and what they don't want now. And look, it used to be us telling them what they did not want. Now they're coming to us and saying, no, I want this, I want that. So it is totally flipped now. It used to be a brand-driven, manufacturing-driven market, but it is very much so a consumer-driven market now because of the level of education they're now exposed to.
Yeah, see, I love the consumer-driven part of it, right? Because again, how many million beers are there, right? How many small craft? I'm in Wisconsin. We're craft beer heaven here, right? They're everywhere. Everyone's gonna have their craft beer. I look forward to that, and I also think with the growth of lounges brings this space even faster and further to market because those lounges are gonna want to have these products in it because that's the replication that I think I see in these lounges that I've already been into. Again, like I said, I'd like to see a lounge like I see bars. I think it would be absolutely outstanding, and it seems only fair to the space. With the beverage space, though, that you're talking about, so really seeing it grow, I see a lot of what you present or talk about in the actual, small containers, you yourself using it. However, let's jump into that a little bit. What is that for the consumer? What should be the expectation? I want the show to be a little bit of education. I want it to be for consumers. So when they see your product or they think about your product, what are we doing with it? How are we using it?
Yeah, I think the best thing that Qwik Drops really represents is convenience and portability, but also discretion. Not everybody wants to be shouting from the mountaintops that they are high or they need to get high. For a lot of us, for most of us, this still is medicine. You don't typically talk about the prescription drugs that you're taking at that time. Usually don't do it out in the open. It should be talked about more, right? But it's not. So unfortunately, that's just where we are. It's just kind of a product of the society that we live in, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's how I found vape, right? Because I was like, well, if everyone has vapor pens, and that's fine. But then after being a flower kid my whole life, getting a vape was like, this sucks. My lungs hurt, my head hurts. This is not how I want to enjoy myself. Because as you're right, I use it for a medicine for migraines. At least that's how I found it. I found it recreationally as a kid. Who doesn't? But as I got older, I turned 18, started suffering from migraines. I realized that it had a lot more value to my life. And that became far more important to me. And that's why I've really found it interesting. So is mom a Qwik Drops? Is she into that?
She has a bottle in her purse at all times. She actually was at a wedding recently that was a dry wedding, unfortunately, and she had switched out her purse and she went in to grab it, and she was very sad that she didn't have it because she said she would have been a big hit amongst the younger people at that party, dosing them drop by drop by drop. So I am fortunate enough to have family that supports what I do in the cannabis space. I think once they were able to get some education themselves on, not just me being able to talk about it, but people like you having podcasts and them being able to look up more information than was ever available to them when they were our age. I think if they had the info, I think that they would have been more of the, my parents' generation, they were the pioneers of where we are today. Yeah. So it's nice to be able to kind of share with them, but also kind of continue the tradition of their generation.
Yeah, no, I remember when you had said mom throwing away my pot, right? My mom, we had gone to see a Tommy Chong comedy show, and I had bought a bong. I was all excited and thought I hit it great. I did, but she found it, she broke it, and I was crushed about it. And now, and then 10 years later, she's saying, hey, sorry about that. We could have used that, And so to me, you're right. I think at the education, that was always my point. I'm an advocate. If I'm into it, I'm into it, and I want everyone else to know why I'm into it, why I trust it, why I do it. And so I was the same way with cannabis. I've always been that way. I think promoting the plant, you talked about it. It should be talked about more. We're trying to get it to the mainstream, right? But it's not going to be easy. However, I think to your point, beverages and the water solubles and these different opportunities are going to make it get there faster. Is that fair to say, you think?
Yeah, in more ways than one. I mean, the difference between an oil-based ingredient and a water-soluble ingredient is the uptake in which your body is able to absorb. Our technology, the differentiation between our technology and what you're seeing in the, say, emulsion space today, our technology is considered a microencapsulation. We're able to encapsulate the cannabinoid with water, so your body recognizes it as water, treats it as water, absorbed as water with the payload in it. So the rapid onset is highly available with a different water soluble technology than what we're seeing in the space today, versus a more of an oil-based carrier, oil-based, chemical-based ingredient that is going to be treated like oil. It's going to be processed through your stomach and through your liver, often converting that D9 into 11-hydroxy and getting kind of that unintended couch locking experience that you don't really want for your consumers. So it's important to have a pharma-grade water soluble that gets along with the body. I mean, it sounds really simple, oil and water and the interaction with, but I mean, we've known this for a long time. And the technologies in which we're using have been available for a very, very long time. Available in the fields of cancer research, Huntington's, Parkinson's. Qwik liquids and the technology behind it truly is the missing link between recreational use and all 5 classes of biotechnology.
Dude, that's awesome to hear. I love how the fact you talk about the water, your body processing it, right? So like, my body knows the tinctures, right? It knows when the wax comes out. It knows when other stuff comes out, because it does put you in a different place. I mean, it's no different than when we, used to have the hash back in the day. It was basically like broken down opium, right? And you were like, oh, this is weird. It tastes different. It's there. It's different. And it's something that I never really enjoyed. Again, so I don't really enjoy vaping. I enjoy flower because it's just, I know what to expect. My body knows what to expect. But I talk for a living, and sometimes it's not easy to do that. And so this product here, I can't wait until it hits one of my borders, Blake, because I'm going. So you just make sure we stay in touch about that, because I'm headed out, because you talk about instantaneous, talk about getting into things. That's, I think that's been my problem. So like, I don't eat my weed, Blake. I'm gonna be honest right now in this show. I haven't said it yet. I don't eat my weed. I don't know why. I've never enjoyed it. I don't think it works for me, because I think I run into the same problem as everybody else. Like, half a brownie, nothing. Sean eats 2 brownies, then an hour from now I'm like underneath my blanket, So this allows me control. You said it, right? You said moderation. You said discretion. You're on airplanes and shit with this picture, I think I've seen, or other people have posted, whatever. My point is that this is the way to get around life. Mom's got it in her purse. No one's ever going to care. Not at TSA, not at fucking baseball security. No one is going to care about mom's eye drops as far as they're concerned. So I really dig it, man. What are you guys seeing as far as when you bring it into, you and I have talked behind the scenes about launching new markets. What are you seeing in new markets? Are you seeing it as like, because again, I don't know, do you worry about retail space? Do you wholesale the concept? What does it look like to you to care about how your product moves within a certain state? I guess that's from a business perspective.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think we have any state that, contractually speaking with our partners, we don't have one single contract that mirrors another because of the different situations, compliance issues, licensing issues, manufacturing capabilities. It really depends on what we're allowed to do and what's moving in that market. So for instance, over the next month, we're launching a 1,000 milligram product in Oklahoma. Over the next month, we are launching a 100 milligram product in New York. They're 2 different products, 2 different markets, but for what they are achieving, they really kind of represent the same thing. A new product in that state that is at its highest kind of dosing point for what's allowed for a recreational market. So in California, we've got a 100 milligram product and a 1,000 milligram product. In Arizona, we have 100 milligram product because that's just recreational right now, and we've got a recreational kitchen license. So it just depends on what we are able to do and what is moving in that market. We do well in markets where price compression has already occurred. We are able to get in there and produce water soluble ingredients that can be used for tinctures, topicals, soft gels, gummies, and chocolates at a price point that makes sense for brands looking for a little more margin on the back end as compared to what they were doing before. We don't typically get the phone call, a year and a half ago, a year ago saying, hey, we're opening a new facility. Why don't you come over and try stuff out? We typically get the phone call when they've already tried everything out and they say, well, shit, here we are. We tried it out. We'd like to kind of give you a shot. How easy is it? Well, we talked about this before. It's about $1,200 worth of equipment. You can solubilize up to 7 kilos of oil a day with that equipment. A pharma grade approach, basic thermodynamics, not much to it. No kind of specialized operator or specialized equipment, and it allows you to be fully self-sufficient over creating what's arguably the most important piece of edibles, of your tinctures, of your topicals, is that water soluble piece, because we talk about the interaction of your body with water. It has to be water. Oil just doesn't work with your body.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I was wondering as far as the tech itself goes. So you go and you look for partners in spaces that are in the co-packing, right? The manufacturing of whatever it is in a certain area. And then you say to them, look, here's what our product can do. Basically, to use the tech world, you add it to their tech stack, right? You say, look, you're already doing this. You add this, and we'd offer it to you $1,200 for the machine, and you don't have to be a scientist to run it. Is that what I'm hearing from you, Blake?
Yeah, I'm not a scientist by any means. We just picked up a process and we made it make sense for the cannabis and hemp manufacturing spaces. The guys that we work with in Colorado, they're great at what they do. They're scientists. They're not product manufacturers. With what they thought would be an easy process and make sense for the cannabis and hemp space, didn't make sense for it. So we had to kind of get in there and really change things around and make it so that it made sense. You know what? Can you repeat that? I'm sorry. Repeat the question there. I apologize. We might have to back up on that one.
You know what? Don't worry about it. I'm going to skip ahead because I want to talk about the scientist part of it, right? When did you have your aha moment? When were you looking into this, looking at them, looking at the situation, going, hold on a second, there's something bigger?
We've had a few of them, but I would say probably the first time we did the process in my buddy Jamie's garage. It was pretty cool to see. It made me realize that that scalability was possible from a fairly small equipment stack, not having to have large cumbersome pieces of equipment, not having to have specialized operators. But also, I think when the true aha moment, now that I think about it, the true aha moment is realizing that it was able to replace alcohol for us. I think was really the moment for us that we realized that A, it can save us money, B, it's going to make us feel better, and C, it's just going to allow us to live the life that we would rather live than, had we been consuming the amount of alcohol that we used to. So cannabis, when used right, it's an off drug. Many of us, we need that balance. Our ECS is clamoring for a balance of cannabinoids. So when you're all thrown out of whack from either mind-altering substances or alcohol or whatever it may be, that balance that cannabis can bring for some of us has saved our lives.
End of that, I hear they call it California sober. I have no problem with whatever you want to call it, because at the end of the day, I believe, and in my own history, I've been able to use cannabis to get myself away from a lot worse shit. Okay, and a lot worse shit. And so for me, it's going to always be a win. It's the same way I quit smoking cigarettes, because I was like, look, I don't need both. This is gross. Like, I don't know why I even did this in the first place. And you drop it. And yeah, did I fall back and smoke more cannabis? Sure. I mean, I have no problem with that, because at the end of the day, I was trying to get rid of one thing that I knew in my heart of hearts needed to go. And the one here, never going to go away, because I don't believe it ever has to. I believe it can be as functional as anything else. And again, you're hanging out with scientists who are trying to crack the code on how to make, oil oil weed into oil water. And to me, I think it's really, really cool. When you what was that approach like? I don't want to go too far into this because I know you've talked about it a lot, but when like, how do you approach them? How do you meet them? Like, tell me that connection, because I'm a Colorado guy, love it, love everyone in it. So I just want to hear about how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't until, that we've had the same business plan and business model for the better part of, almost 3 years now. Before we were Qwik Liquids, we were just repping this technology under a different brand. And then we kind of realized, why don't we do this on our own? We understand the market. We understand the process. Why don't we just go at it? So it really, to be honest, has not been until relatively recently that we've been able to dig our fingers into some fairly large deals that have enabled us to kind of look back and validate and say, hey, look, what we were talking about 2 years ago, that same business model is finally catching on in multiple states. I simply, truly, in a perfect world, want to be an ingredients provider. I provide the ingredients and our manufacturers get it done. Okay. We provide the ingredients to make the computer chips, if you will, and our manufacturers make the computer chips for their edibles. But I would just rather be an ingredient supplier. Be a line item on an invoice is where I want to be.
Agreed, dude. Agreed. Do you think that is what federal would bring to the game? Would it complicate your life to that goal, make it easier? Where do you stand? Because we've already discussed how annoying the bifurcation of states is.
Yeah, I'm glad.
I think federal has its own drawback. Tell me what you think a federal move would make for your business model.
Well, what I'm about to say might be a little controversial, but I think if we are moving towards Schedule 3, and if unfortunately the legacy operator is pushed out for, say, women's health, I'm for it. There's an entire community out there that has been completely gaslit by the entire medical community about the way they feel or the ailments in which they're suffering from. A young gentleman, a good friend of mine, Mark Gannott on LinkedIn, is a specialist in women's health and neurogenomics, and he made a post recently about the average woman who, by the time she's diagnosed with endometriosis, I believe she spends about $160,000 to $170,000 of her own money before she's properly diagnosed, missing work, treatments, being sick, missing out on life, general quality of life is affected by ailments that affect women 6 times more than men, such as Crohn's and IBS, but also things like endometriosis or dysmenorrhea, painful periods, can be very much so supplemented and treated, I think, with water-soluble cannabinoids, water-soluble CBG, water-soluble CBGA in the format of rectal and vaginal suppositories, I think can change entire communities and potentially eradicate, certain medicines that we have thought have been required for some of those ailments that we've talked about. Multi-billion-dollar, multi-international companies like Bayer throwing up their hands and saying, sorry, ladies, we're not going to treat your issues anymore is just such a crock of shit that it's unbelievable that would even happen. In 2022, I believe, when it did happen, it's just unbelievable that we're still up against this. So I have 5 sisters and a great mom. And a great sister-in-law, 6 sisters. So I want to see the best for half of the community, half of the population that has otherwise been forgotten about. So if a more pharma-grade approach is going to be coming down the pipeline for the cannabis industry, and it is in the form of Schedule 3, and that does push out the legacy operator or the micro grower in favor of women's health, I'm all for it.
Okay, so all right, we got a couple things here. All right, so you're endometriosis, right? Do you have, is that a personal thing for you, or are you just talking in general? And I'll follow up with why in a second.
Well, I mean, obviously not for me.
No,
I mean,
don't
obviously
personally
you have
you.
to.
I mean,
Yes.
in the 7 women, 8 women, your wife, anyone that you just mentioned, is it something you've dealt with personally?
Yeah, four of them. Yeah, I think if you were to be in a room of 100 people, okay, let's picture this. If you were in a room of 100 people and you ask them, how many of you know somebody who suffers from sleeplessness, anxiety, depression, general things that we kind of see on the day to day, that are talked about, right? Everyone's going to raise their hand. How many of you can probably know or go somewhere, say to a dispensary, and get a product at a dispensary that treats one of the or helps one of the ailments that we just talked about? Everyone's going to raise their hand. Now we're asking the same group of people, how many of you know somebody who suffers from Crohn's, endometriosis, IBS, dysmenorrhea? Everyone's going to raise their hand, okay? Now ask that same follow-up question. How many of you know a dispensary or a product that's cannabis-based that you could use to treat any of those ailments we just talked about? Maybe 3 or 4 of them are going to raise their hand. That's the conversation that I want to change. Yeah. And not to mention, if women in the United States that have access to what we consider the best medical, the healthcare system in the world, which is arguable, other countries, third world countries, women are affected by the same ailments, and we really do want to go into kind of more of a worldly approach with the Qwik Liquids platform and get our products into development states, into research states, and really be focused on changing and improving the lives of people on the day-to-day. I think the future is smokeless, so that's where we're headed.
Yeah, man. Look, my wife suffered from it when I first met her. She made it very clear to me she was struggling with this. She's like, look, probably can't have kids. And I'm like, perfect. I'm not dad material, so that's no problem for me. Whatever, we're gonna do this. And I watched this woman go through years of anguish, years of pain, and finally came to the decision where she's like, look, I've done it all. You're cool with no kids. I just want to get this shit out of me, and I want to move on with my life. She's like, I'm doing a full hysterectomy. I don't want to be bothered. Let's just, please, can I do this? She was 29 years old. And we went to her doctor, and her doctor, I shit you not, Blake, he looks at her and he's like, you sure? And she's like, yeah, I'm sure. And he turns to me and he goes, and you're going to let her? And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. What did you just say, man? I'm like, did this woman tell you that's what she wants? Because what the fuck I say don't make a difference here. I don't know what world you live in, but this is what she wants to do. And she's like, doctor's like, well, it should be important. You should talk through it. Why don't you guys give it a year and come back to me? I kind of looked at her, she looked at me. I was like, why we got to wait a year? She just said she's been dealing with it. She's 14 years old, 15 years enough for her. She wants to move on. Well. There's all this advancement in the medicine, all this advancement in the laparoscopy bullshit, which we'd already been through and we already knew wasn't going to do the job. So we go through it. He runs me through the math of having a healthy child. We get done with the math and I'm like, no, not doing that. Can you agree to this? All right, give it some time, Finally, they agree to do it. Changes her life, right? She's great. She feels better. But, Blake, to the point, then Western medicine says, look, just take estrogen and get out of the way. Just go, and that's it. That's all you need. Turns out that isn't all she needs from a bioidentical hormone status because she's had her entire insides removed, right? And so people aren't really putting it all together. So your passion about the women's health is for me, but help me understand why would Schedule 3 push that out of the legacy and be the focus of women's health? Why couldn't we have both the legacy and a focus on women's health?
I don't think Schedule 3 will necessarily allow for that. Well, I would like to see both. There's going to be winners and losers of whatever regulation or laws come down the pipeline. But I think that there are certain sectors of the industry that have otherwise not really been focused on at all. And it's unfortunate because the legacy grower has done such a great job of creating a product that has been deemed medicine. They've almost done such a good job that it's likely going to push them out of being really involved in the long-term market. And when I say legacy grower, I'm talking about the traditional owner operator that we see I'm from Northern California, that we see in Northern California. My entire family is from Eureka.
Emerald Triangle. Yeah.
They're all up there.
Yeah.
So we understand it from an intimate standpoint. But even the Emerald Triangle needs a diversification of industry. So when you saw the legacy operator coming out of California and having a tough time operating a traditional business, it wasn't because they necessarily couldn't with the right tools. It's because they really weren't taught how to beforehand. There wasn't a lot of diversification of industry in Humboldt County or in Mendocino County. I mean, growing was what you did. So when it became legitimate, operation was tough, and that was a hard growing learning curve for much of the legacy operated industry. And I'm going to get shit for saying a lot of that, but that's just what we saw up there at that time.
No, and look, it's more than a fair point. I mean, look, the reality is that you can be, like you said very early on in our conversation, be good at something, right? Hell, be great at something. Don't try to be great at everything, because you're going to end up probably not doing that. And the grower was great at the growing. That doesn't mean you can run a business. I have this conversation with people all the time. They're like, oh man, I can just go do this on my own. Cool. Have you considered A, B, C, and D? No, I haven't. Well, that's what running a business is. It's not just doing what you know how to do. That's not enough. You have to know how to scale it, how to make revenue from it. It can't just be because I know how, right? And these guys have always been great at it. Look, I don't want to see any of that happen, right? I'm with you. I'd rather see it be, I'd rather figure out the scheduling a little better and do something that would benefit both women's health. Because let me ask you, the women in your family who've dealt with it, have they had an opportunity to be in the Qwik drops? Is there something you're seeing from a personal level of a testimonial, if you will, of value there? Because look, man, I'm pushing my wife to write a book about the whole thing, because her experience is wild and no one's talking about it. There aren't enough conversations about it. So what are you hearing on that level?
Without getting obviously too personal and in depth, the family has had pretty solid success in diminishing pain, in diminishing pain from extremely painful period cycles, traditional cramping, or being out of service. Out of just in general, not being able to
go to work, can't leave the couch, man. I mean, heating pads all day.
3 days. Yeah, it was a 3 or 4 day process or a cycle, and now it's kind of gone down to anywhere between 10 to 12 hours, maybe a day on bad months. But we've seen it firsthand what introducing water-soluble cannabinoids in the form of rectal and vaginal suppositories. We have seen it succeed.
Man, that's awesome. That is talk about the work inside of the work, right? Like that to me is a wonderful, wonderful mission of any of this, because I have seen it firsthand and I know the effects of it. And I don't think, I mean, look, if I think maybe if there were options, maybe she wouldn't have gone down that road. I think she likely would have, because she'd been fighting it for 15 years. So I think it ends there anyhow, especially given our not having children discussion anyway. So I think there's just parts of that. But man, what cool work, and that's really great. That's really great. Well, look, I was going to say, typically with the last part of the show, we like to get into what you're passionate about. I have a feeling I just covered some of it. Is there anything else that you're top of your mind right now that you think people need to be hearing about in this space, whether it's consumer-based, operator-based, manufacturing-based? What does Blake want to get off his chest right now about the space?
I think that I would say that having moved to Arizona to launch our brand, we realize what trouble or how difficult operating in the California cannabis market truly is. But I think also it's a self-inflicted wound. I think that the California cannabis space is grossly overpriced. I mean, just disgustingly overpriced. There is not an eighth in the world out there that is, I'm sorry, hate to say it, There's not an eighth in the world out there that's worth more than $50 retail plus taxes. Not a goddamn one.
Nah,
It might be supply.
not from what we used to
It
pay.
might be. It might be supply and demand. It might be supply and demand. It might be different things. But with taxes and all that shit built in, it's not the true value of what that cannabis actually is. So
Correct.
when
But how
we're
much of
building
it's a
all
tax
in,
problem, Blake? I don't mean to, how much of it's a tax problem in that state, though? Because
that's fair. A tax
it-
problem. It
not
can.
existing.
It's yeah, but taxes in California are more of a pass through that are paid for through the consumer at the price point of sale. So it's still overpriced before they're even buying it. When you're talking about 100 milligram distillate based edibles being sold for $20, that's fucking highway robbery. You can't tell me they're double keystoning that. If they were double keystoning that, it would cost them what, $5 to manufacture at scale gummies, 100 milligram? Are you shitting me? That's not happening. So there is definitely an institutionalization of overpricing that has been spread across the entire country. I think from California. I think California has fucked up the entire cannabis market. I love it. I love the people there. We're active there. We will always be active there. But California has a California cannabis problem. Ask anybody in Nevada. Ask anybody in Arizona. Ask anybody in fucking Oregon where they crush. They don't have those problems in Oregon. It was cheaper for my wife and I to drive from Sacramento, California to Medford, Oregon when gas was $5 a gallon in California to buy the edibles that we needed or wanted for 2 months and drive back to Sacramento than it was to just buy those edibles in Sacramento itself. So that's a problem. And that needs to be addressed, but I don't think it's just taxation. I think a lot of manufacturers and growers are still trying to hold on to the margins of yesteryear, and it's just not happening anymore. You no longer have the ability to be an operator from afar. You have to be involved on the day-to-day to keep your labor costs low. It is labor and depreciation is what we're all paying. So you have to keep it as low as you possibly can. And paying somebody else to do a job that you can potentially do yourself isn't the way that it used to be, but it's the way that it needs to be now.
Wow, a lot to unpack right there. We talk about California. I'm with you. Pre-COVID, my wife and I made a killer road trip from I don't remember the Santa Monica up to we flew out of Portland like a week later, and we drove all the way up there. And we were in Cali, and it was fine. It was a cool little craft dispensary we wandered into next to a breakfast joint. It was fine. But then we start getting up into Oregon, and things were different. Things changed. I mean, it looked different. It felt different. The dispensaries themselves were more reasonable. And I knew this only because I had been going to stop at them. It was, sort of like the guy here. It was a High Five Cannabis outside of in Oregon. And the guy says, oh, man, this is what we used to do, but we had to go all the way to Amsterdam to go on these weed tours. It's really cool. You guys are doing it from here to there. What have you seen? And I'm like, well, your prices are reasonable, but you're all in this whole THC space, and I think you're all lying. So I think anytime you guys put 30, 40, 50, you're trying to get consumer eyeballs. Look, man, my history's in the car business. No one knows the marketing game, tricksterness, overpricing market than me in the automotive space. And to see it in cannabis, to hear you say it like that about Cali, that Cali has a cannabis problem, right? That's what I sometimes feel about my own industry is everyone was cool to charge during COVID when there were no cars, but now you want to come out and still do that when there are cars? That shit ain't going to work and people aren't going to buy them. So I don't know what to tell you. Blake, with that whole part of it, some of that, though, is consumer driven, right? That's what I say about any inflation metric is that California gets away with it because its consumers still pay it. Or is that not happening? Is that why the black market is still doing what it's doing in that space, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I think it just depends how you view the consumer. Is the consumer a patient or is the consumer just a recreational user? In my personal opinion, it's still a medical-based industry. I, quite frankly, think that California got it wrong when they recently vetoed the laws about all of the marketing on packaging. I enjoy going up to Oregon and buying weed out of the film canisters. I think that
my
is
favorite part. Are you kidding
cannabis.
me? Be able to pop it and smell it instead of
I think and being able to pick it out the deli style, I think it's true cannabis. But I personally think that we try to limit our packaging to as little as possible because every packaging add-on that we have, we are passing on to the consumer. I'm not trying to sell the consumer packaging. I'm not selling the consumer a label. I'm not selling them a box. I'm selling the contents of a package. The consumer is too smart nowadays. You can only fool the consumer once with cool packaging and kitschy shit, right? But if you have a really, really good product, I don't think you should need the colorful bubble letters and you don't need your face on the packaging and you don't need to be. I just think it's. I mean, look, if you were to, everybody wants to talk about how cannabis isn't alcohol, but we want to market like alcohol. I think a better approach is if you go down, say, like the pain relief aisle. Look at aspirin, look at Tylenol, look at Aleve. I think that's the marketing that cannabis should more emulate and be backed up by what's in the package versus what's on the packaging. And I think that goes back to the overpricing point. I think it's just every single thing that's being passed on, all these cool boxes, all this cool just bullshit. No one's here for that. I mean, give me your tired, give me your poor, your weak, your huddled masses. That's a cannabis dispensary. That's no longer, it's funny that the people that we think we are serving are the people that look like us and that we talk to on social media every single day. Those are not your cannabis consumers. Your average cannabis consumer is working 60 to 70 hours a week. They're getting paid minimum wage or a little bit more. They're not trying to go out there and pay $60 for a fucking eighth of weed. Give me a goddamn break. It's just too much to ask for at this point.
And it's got to be less because when I left Colorado, I left Colorado 2013. I left Colorado. No, Jesus Christ, 2010. I left Colorado, and my wife and I were medical growers. I watched the wholesale price of an ounce go from $4.50 to $2.50 in like what felt like 2.5 weeks. And it was because people were already getting ready in 2010 for what the eventual market was going to be when they went full rec. And that wasn't that far off. And when that happened, right, they were already ready. The price point was rocking. Nobody felt like, you didn't hear the complaints like you heard in Cali about, oh, the price of the wholesale market, oh, it's all crap. They didn't care. They were already prepared. Did it hurt me? Sure. I mean, you got to, keep the lights on. But at the end of the day, we saw it happen in the market because you said it. The consumer won't be fooled too many times. So if you want to keep up with it, you've got to be competitive in the space. Damn, Blake, that is some serious passion right there. And I think people are going to feel educated. And you know what? I'm not a parent, so I don't try to comment on parent shit. But I will say that the kitschy packaging does feel like, Joe Camel shit from back in the day, right? Where it feels, I know that's not the goal. I know you're trying to be artsy and set yourself apart, but it does feel like you're trying to appeal to a consumer that probably isn't actually who you're looking for. I think it's more of a marketing gag than it is an actual consumer delivery. So let's wrap this show up, dude.
It cut out there a little bit. Sorry there. I'm not. I missed that whole last part. Apologies.
Don't worry about it, dude. This has been happening. The internet has been a pain for everyone recently. So you all good now?
Yes, I am good. What I was going to say, pricing. When I graduated high school in 2002, an ounce of gold and an ounce of weed were both $300. Like that was just the number that we knew. $300, ounce of weed. An ounce of gold, I just looked it up. An ounce of gold right now is $1,959. And an ounce of weed you can get just about anywhere for, almost $100, $150 if you know the right person, or you can find the right deal at the right dispensary. So,
gold, Blake. That's where you and I already missed this deal. We bought too many ounces.
Oh shit, man. Imagine if every ounce that you bought when you were a kid, you bought an ounce of gold and stashed that somewhere versus just, the ounce of weed that you smoked. I mean, gosh, our parents would be so proud of us.
Money, I would be a happy boy if that were the case from what I was doing when I was 20. Shit, I'd have felt real smart one of those deals, dude. All right.
I was the largest gold smuggler.
Let's wrap this up with something that I want to personally touch on with you. I touched on it with you on the pre-show. Talk to me and explain to folks about how Blake Viala travels in hotels. Tell me why you started doing what you're doing and explain to folks what it is that you do and why you feel it's important.
Oh, are you referring to my amateur stripping career?
Yeah, no, we're not talking about. Well, yes, your amateur housekeeping career, dude. You get me? I'm like,
you thought I had an actual? Oh no. So yes, my amateur stripping career in hotels. I come from the restaurant world, restaurant management, front of the house, food and beverage. And the last restaurant job that I had was managing managing the restaurant at the Club Med at Port St. Lucie, Florida. All inclusive vacation spot. It was the worst, hardest, most ridiculous job I've just ever had in my life. So once we, oh shit, I lost where we we're going. What was the question again? I'm sorry, Damon. Hopefully you can cut that part out.
Why you were doing it. You're good. Keep on the track.
Okay, that's what it was.
Why you started your amateur stripper career. That's what we're getting to.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so I worked in the service industry. The last restaurant job I had was absolutely terrible. I think it's important to give back to the service industry in whatever way you possibly can. I don't think anybody wakes up and says that, or when they were a kid says, I want to work in the service industry. Maybe they do because they have, or they're exposed to it. But I think there's just little things that you can do in your day-to-day life that makes it so that the people that are tasked with getting spaces ready for the next person has the easiest job possible. I don't really think that it's the job of, say, a janitor or a maintenance person to clean up after me. It might be their job to get the space ready for me based on how the last person used it. But I know that I can make their job a little bit easier if I just maybe spend 2 minutes to 3 minutes. We're talking 3 minutes of my day before I check out to do a couple of things in my hotel. Make sure all my trash is picked up. Make sure the towels and the sheets are all bundled up and off the bed. I just make it so that if that person that's walking in and they are coming in to see the room that they have to clean, I hope they kind of just smile a little bit and realize their day just got just a little bit easier. Hell, I picture that, someone had a really, really hard day and they might just kick their feet up and sit down for 5 or 10 minutes, knowing that they can just relax for a second. And I think I think it's important to respect the service industry like you respect your family, like you respect your friends. It's just, I think the difference between decency and an indecent person is about 15 words a day. It's the hellos, the goodbyes, the how are you doing, how is your family, just little tiny questions. If you see somebody on a regular basis more than you see your immediate family, know that person's name. Whether or not you have anything in common with that person, know that person's name. Maybe get to know their story. You might learn something. I just think that there are a lot of people out there that you can relate to if you look at them as equals. You can be surprised by just about anybody that you walk past every single day. So on that note, I think it's important to be able to leave your mark in this world, but also know that you are leaving a mark on somebody else's world in a positive way.
Man, so not only the Qwik liquids man, but the humanitarian, the women's health advocate. I mean, the list goes on and on. Blake, man, thank you so much for joining the show today. You have been absolutely a ball. We look forward to having you on again, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
And everybody, thank you for joining us as always. Remember, it is our goal, it is our duty to raise this plant to where it rightfully belongs in our society. And this show is going to be on the forefront of that. So please do your best to support it, share it with your friends, because we will have this plant in the mainstream before too long. Thank you all so much. We look forward to joining you next week.